Governing hosted an invited group of state and local government leaders in Washington, D.C. for its first ever summit on the cost of government in September 2010. At a time of permanent financial crisis, when there is little prospect of returning to fiscal balance, how do we go forward? Governing correspondents interviewed leaders from across the country in search of answers. In this segment, the budget, priorities, and our ability to pay for them. Here's what they had to say.
Tell me what you see as the origins of New York State's budget problems. Where does the structural shortfall come from?
Well, it comes from years and years of using one-shots, that is, borrowings and asset sales, to close holes in operating budgets. New York is not unique in that regard. California's done it, Illinois has done it, and I'm sure many other states have done it as well. So the problem is that if you don't use recurring revenues to balance recurring expenses, you're in trouble. The second part of the problem stems from the fact that our expenditures, in large part coming from healthcare and education, are growing a lot faster than our revenues. So the gap between what I would call structural revenue and structural expenditures is widening. And we're not addressing that problem for many reasons. Perhaps the most important of all is that we budget on a cash basis instead of on an accrual basis. We don't use generally accepted accounting principles for developing and administering a budget, and therefore the consequences of that are very serious.
Is there something Maricopa County has done that other places haven't done? An innovation that's allowed you to maintain solid financial footing?
With a variety of policies on everything from budget to revenues to how we do capital to when we would do any sort of a tax reduction that has to be sustainable into the long-term future, to a 5-year revenue and expenditure projection. So everything is tightly disciplined in Maricopa County when it comes to spending the taxpayers' money. So that's really the first answer, is to not only be disciplined, but also to be very alert to the changes that are going on around you. I'm always doing a threat assessment. In other words, who's coming after Maricopa County's money, who's trying to add to our service burdens, who's trying to add mandates from the state or the federal government, what is going on with our criminal justice system that's growing so rapidly, you know, with handling 40,000 felony cases, 7,000 people in our jails, et cetera, et cetera. You know, where are the problems coming? Look at them coming over the horizon, deal with them very early in the process.
Let's talk about the impact of the Great Recession on state and local governments. Is this a passing fiscal storm or the beginning of a new era of constraints?
We are in a new era of constraints. I mean, I think it began actually back in about 2001. But it's not a passing storm. The revenue side is a passing storm.
To what extent do states have the tools to address the problems of demographic change and healthcare cost inflation? Are these problems states can actually solve?
Well, on demographics, I mean, you can't solve demographics. You just have to adjust for demographics. And states and localities are certainly doing that. You know, there's a lot of places that are changing their pension systems and that are forcing employees to contribute more to their pensions or more to their healthcare retirement. So there are things you can do. You can also do, you can anticipate this wave of retirements and do succession planning and make sure you've got the right people in place and that the knowledge is getting transferred, you're training them, and so on and so forth.
How do you get legislators to focus on results?
It's been really difficult in a state where we have been known for our budgeting for outcomes approach for a while to really zero in on what we've stopped doing. We've made a lot of things better, but it's really hard at the end of the day to say, what is government not doing anymore? And I think we've reached a precipice where we really have to ask some big structural questions, like what are the core functions of government? Do we really need to be in that business? And we got to the point of asking ourselves this question very seriously. Does the state need to be in the business of selling and distributing liquor? Which there's all kinds of reasons why the state should be in the business of enforcing. But when the chips are down and you're trying to figure out, do we pay 900 liquor store clerks or do we hire 600 teachers? It really brings your priorities into very sharp focus.
More recently, you've been working with the city of New Orleans, helping them reorganize their government. What's it like working with a city in that sort of post-crisis situation?
What has struck me working in New Orleans, and I've been there 3 years now during their budget process, my responsibilities have been primarily to help them put a budget together, to help the mayor put a budget together. And it's using the new budgeting approach that I have described, the outcome budgeting approach, where you identify your priorities and then you align your resources with them and then track progress. What has struck me in New Orleans is the resilience of the workforce in city government and the persistence of the politicians to keep forging ahead and keep making progress in the face of great adversity. There are many challenges left in New Orleans, but they have made great progress putting government, city government, on a path of being more accountable and more respected by the citizens of the city.
Insights. They're a governing thing. In the magazine and at governing.com. Made possible through the support of NIC, the e-government people.